Ole Miss is in a great position to get an elite transfer portal target.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there, hosted by me, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today's show is packed. We're breaking down the looming decision of elite transfer portal cornerback Thaddeus Dixon from Washington. Could he bring a Trey Amos-like impact to the Ole Miss cornerback room? And it's not a guaranteed home run that he's coming to Ole Miss. So we'll discuss exactly what to expect from Dixon on Saturday. Also, we'll dive into how the NFL could shake up the transfer portal in these last remaining few weeks, and the whole landscape could change and what that might mean for Ole Miss, one of the last key landing spots for talent. We'll explain that as well. And don't miss our preview of tomorrow's Ole Miss Mississippi State basketball showdown. We are free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. For your second listen, check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for more perspectives on the SEC and Ole Miss even. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So, really interesting news. On Saturday is going to be an action-packed day that all Ole Miss fans are probably going to be locked in watching. Seriously, because of the commitment coming from Thaddeus Dixon, who is an elite quarterback that has Trey Amos-type potential on the outside. And Ole Miss is taking on Mississippi State in the hoops version of the Egg Bowl. We'll talk about all of that. And, of course, all of the clickbait artists on Twitter, they're all over Deion Sanders to the Dallas Cowboys, which, if it happens, that could open up a 30-day transfer portal for Colorado players. And Ole Miss still has 2 weeks left to bring people in the transfer portal. And if Lane Kiffin is nothing else, he is active in roster building, and he's very good at it traditionally of what's going on. Thaddeus Dixon is a cornerback from Washington, the Washington Huskies. He had 26 solo tackles, 10 passes defense, and 1 interception this season with the Huskies. That was coached by Jed Fish. His defensive coordinator, I think it was Steve Belichick. He is at North Carolina. North Carolina is hiring the defensive backs coach. All of that is going on. So with the decision coming tomorrow, because that's what everybody looks at, hey, pin this, we're going to decide soon. I guess Thaddeus Dixon needed a graphic made is the reason he put it out there. That is going on. And like I talked about earlier, the North Carolina is expected to hire Washington's Armand Hawkins as a defensive backs coach. Sources tell 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports. Hawkins was considered an up-and-coming coach and recruiter, worked with Steve Belichick this year at Washington. Belichick obviously is the defensive coordinator at North Carolina. The head coach is Bill Belichick. So the interesting thing here is this decision is happening at some point on Saturday. Do not know when. I'm assuming it's going to be in the later part of Saturday since he is a University of Washington student, and that is probably where he lives. So it might be happening in the Pacific time zone time frame. But this is the last three kind of. The Washington Huskies staying there, the Ole Miss Rebels, and the North Carolina Tar Heels. Those are the three schools that we're kind of watching right now. There's others that tried to get in on him, and they might have, and there might be something that we just don't know about that's out there. But those three schools are the ones that we are concentrating on at the moment. Thaddeus Dixon, elite cornerback. Like I said, Ole Miss has a chance to one and done him the same way they did Trey Amos and turn him around into a first-round draft pick, just like they're going to do with Trey Amos. And by all accounts, Thaddeus Dixon and his camp are receptive to that. But everybody is worried about North Carolina because of Bill Belichick. He's the GOAT. He is the greatest coach in NFL history coaching at the college level. That would be intriguing. His defensive back coach and defensive coordinator have moved to the North Carolina Tar Heels. So we obviously should be wary of that. Now, I'm not the admissions expert on the state of North Carolina admissions, but the last day for them to register, to late register at North Carolina, was the 15th. It was yesterday. It was the day that he put out the tweet that said Saturday. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. But we will see how it goes, because whenever you search the student directory, which is normally a cheat for looking at stuff like that after people have registered, they show up. He is not showing up on the database as a North Carolina student as of yet. Yes, we are national treasuring the heck out of this. Now, Washington is in a situation to where it looks like they can still late register into school. They're not quite as going to be as late as Ole Miss into February, because Ole Miss's last day of drop ad is like February 2nd or 3rd. Washington's like January 26th. So there's still an opportunity to get him in there. So this is just my hunch of what's going on. I think that the best landing spot for this prospect is Ole Miss and working under Pete Golding. And I think he knows that as well. But looking at these other programs, there's just kind of some pieces that don't fit. Now, like I said, I'm not an expert on North Carolina college admissions. I'm not an expert on Washington college admissions. I'm going by the academic calendar that is readily available online. But if he's not showing up in the student directory after he has already registered, because the deadline to register was yesterday, that's probably a bad sign for North Carolina. Like I said, I could be completely wrong. I'm going off the academic calendar. So it looks like it might be a Washington with a new defensive back coach, a new defensive coordinator, all new. No matter where, if he picks Washington or Ole Miss, he's dealing with a new situation. And you've got a situation that Ole Miss can point to is like, hey, we took this one-year player. He came in for 1 year, and we're going to put him in the first round area in the league. In the last 6 or 7 games of the season, people didn't even throw to that side of the field. It was a pointless endeavor. So that is where I'm kind of sitting mentally right now on Thaddeus Dixon. I think Ole Miss has an excellent shot to land him because of that thing. Whenever you look at late registration at North Carolina is over, and Washington would require basically new coaches on the defensive side of the ball and his position coach being different, I think it looks good. Like I said, I could be completely wrong on that, and we'll see exactly how it goes. It should be completely interesting, honestly, because Thaddeus Dixon and Ben Bell are probably the two remaining defensive prospects that are on the board unless a new one pops. The player out of Washington State committed. He's a safety player. He's going to be a box safety that plays up towards the line of scrimmage. They're going to blitz him. They're going to do all of that stuff. They're going to take advantage of his skill set. So that's what they're thinking there. They bring in, if they can get the number one option at cornerback, they have a chance to really sew that up as well. And Ben Bell, like I said, he has a chance to really shoot up the draft boards if he came to Ole Miss and Pete Golding got a hold of him, because Pete Golding, if nothing else, he is excellent at getting defensive ends drafted. That's kind of what he does. Getting NFL defensive ends drafted will be important for Ben Bell, and Pete Golding is just the master of that. Ben Bell, by the way, 126 tackles in his career, 31 tackles for loss, 19 sacks, 2 passes defended. In 2023, he had 10 sacks. He had 1 sack in 2024 because of an injury. It was a weird year for him, and he ended up just like, hey, we don't need to play the 4th game. So we'll see how it looks. We are winding down in the transfer portal. We got about 2 weeks to go, and it could get a little bit weird here towards the end. And what I mean by that is, could Ole Miss benefit from the transfer portal moves if NFL teams like Dallas make a big hire, like Deion Sanders or a Matt Campbell or a Marcus Freeman? These 10-win college coaches, these dominoes are lining up. I'll tell you how it could play out and how Ole Miss could benefit. Stick around. You know, this message is brought to you by Prize Picks, as the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game of daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying the football action. Now it's playoff time. There's no better way to get in on the action than Prize Picks. Here's how it works. Simply pick more or less on at least two players. And if your picks hit, you can win up to $1,000, 1,000 times your cash. That's right. 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, I'm all about the hot takes this season. This week on Prize Picks, I'm kind of looking at Lamar Jackson throwing for more than 250 yards and Travis Kelce more than 170 receiving yards. It's fun to predict and easy to play. Plus, with Prize Picks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. And with the apps, you can still get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. So ready to run your game this football season? Download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing the game. Do not wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, so one interesting thing that is happening in the NFL in the transfer portal season, and where college football and the NFL is kind of coming together potentially, there's a lot of college names that are getting mentioned for NFL jobs this cycle. You've heard Matt Campbell, a 10-win coach out of Iowa State. You've heard Marcus Freeman, a 10-win or whatever he is now at Notre Dame. Deion Sanders, a 10-win coach at Colorado. You have a situation to where these guys are in a position to change everything. Ole Miss has about 2 weeks that they can still take transfers. The last day at drop ad is February 2nd. So that means that if one of these coaches get hired sometime in the next couple of days, those players can enter the transfer portal and have about 7 days to take a visit to Ole Miss and decide to transfer to that school. It's a quick turnaround. It can happen. But remember, Jackson Dart was still 2 weeks away from signing with Ole Miss whenever he chose to transfer to Ole Miss. Signing late in the process is a major advantage for Ole Miss. And this year, potentially being a big year in the NFL to go get college coaches, it could be really interesting. It can change again and have another run if the NFL just decides to have the run on college coaches like Marcus Freeman. Now, we do not have a situation to where if, say, Marcus Freeman goes to Chicago, for instance, it's probably not enough time to have the coach at Notre Dame starting a domino effect until the spring transfer portal window. But Marcus Freeman or Matt Campbell or Deion Sanders or even Lincoln Riley or somebody like that has a chance to do a singular place to where Ole Miss can look at cornerbacks, defensive linemen, the holes that people have been looking forward to Ole Miss handling in this transfer portal window. Maybe they'd have an option at a higher level prospect whenever that happens. Remember, there hasn't been a Walter Nolan. There hasn't been a Princely Emmanuel. There has not been a Trey Amos to this point at Ole Miss signed, committed. The only one that is close to that Trey Amos would be a Thaddeus Dixon, who is committing on Saturday. He's committing tomorrow. So we'll see exactly how it goes. But the NFL has a chance to really shape roster construction in 2025, because if they take one of these major college coaches, there's going to be a run on their roster, because there's always a run on the roster. There is always a situation that players are going to jet as soon as their head coach is gone. That's just the way it works. And this being at the very end of the transfer portal cycle, probably a chance to make some coin with some of the desperate programs that might be out there and still available. There's a post-spring transfer portal window. I do not put much stock in it. When you look at what Ole Miss has done traditionally over the last 3 or 4 years, the late transfer portal window in the first year, it just doesn't work. The hit rate is minuscule. I mean, somebody like Micah Davis, okay, punt returner, but if you look at the total impact, probably wasn't what we hoped it would be. When you look at those spring players that transfer out, it's a different animal than the players that transfer in the winter. It's just the way it works. It's kind of like the early signing period is more important than the later signing period. That's just the way this works. So Ole Miss coming through whenever February 3rd hits, Ole Miss is going to be about 95% done with their roster building. Sure, Ole Miss is going to add. They're going to continue to add players in hopes that they hit after the spring transfer portal, but I don't think there's going to be that many. I think you might be looking at 2 or 3 prospects at the most, as Ole Miss is really close to finishing up their roster. But right now, the one X factor that everybody is watching will be, will the NFL take one of these college coaches while the transfer portal window is open and the roster just gets rated? I mean, that is a legit thing that could happen. It's a real thing. And I think that some of these coaches and some of these organizations are close. I think Washington can make a call fairly quickly. Now, you have a situation where January 20th is the national championship game. Chicago could announce it on January 21st, which coincidentally is about the first day of classes at Ole Miss. And you got about 10 days, about 9 days, something like that, for the drop-ed period to end at Ole Miss. Remember, Jackson Dart signed with Ole Miss on like January 31st in 2022. We are nowhere near done this situation. And if something pops, Ole Miss is going to be there to take advantage of it. And the one thing that I'm interested in, and one thing that I think could happen, let's say Jerry Jones takes a flyer on Deion Sanders, which honestly, Deion is probably the only person out there that has the personality to deal with Jerry Jones. So, and if you want Dallas to be successful, you go get somebody like Deion Sanders, because he is like built like Jimmy Johnson and can stand up to Jerry Jones. But if that happens, that Colorado roster is going to get rated. And one of the players that all Ole Miss fans are going to be interested in is Jaheim Otis, who ended up committing up there. His number will probably go down considerably, but it all depends on whether or not he wants to play in a place where he's comfortable and can be developed, or roll the dice based off his current contract in Colorado. Because a lot of people there is getting a discount basically on their price because they want to play for Deion Sanders. It's just the way it works. You can have somebody that has a number in their hand of $500,000. Deion has a chance to get it done for $350 because of the name. That benefit of the doubt is going away if Deion Sanders left Colorado. That's my point there. So we'll see with how the NFL handles these college level teams, these high level competition teams, and if Ole Miss is in a position to kind of handle what's going on. Just a little inside baseball for everybody. Whenever I worked at Ole Miss, there was many times that we preemptively, depending on the situation, did film breakdowns on players. And it doesn't matter, you don't know if that's going to happen, but you want to have something to look at real quick and turn it around real fast if something does happen. So what I think is going on is the players in the national championship game, the Ohio State and Notre Dame, the players that are being mentioned on teams, whose teams are mentioned as a potential NFL hire, like Deion Sanders, like Matt Campbell, like Marcus Freeman, those guys, those tapes and those breakdowns are already there. And I guarantee you that the coaching staff from multiple coaching staffs have already looked at this roster and decided it's like, hey, can this guy fit? Is this guy a fit for what we do? So they're going to know whether or not he's a fit well before he even gets into the transfer portal, because that's just the way this works, honestly. In our final segment, Ole Miss heads down to Starkville for one of the biggest matchups in series history. Ole Miss is aiming for a 5-0 SEC start, while Mississippi State is looking to snap a 2-game skid. It is a sellout at the hump. Do not miss the breakdown. From the final whistle, first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and a variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement in the playoffs, FanDuel has got you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so let's change gears a little bit and talk about the basketball game in Humphrey Coliseum today. Should be a lot of fun. Ole Miss versus Mississippi State. Ole Miss looking to go 5-0 in the Southeastern Conference for the first time in a minute, and Mississippi State is looking to stop a 2-game skid. Now, do not freak out about Mississippi State having a 2-game skid. You see that and you're like, okay, this is a team that's beatable. Well, their 2 losses are against Kentucky and against Auburn. There's no shame there. That happens. This is a very tough league. So know that Ole Miss is going to walk into a very tough environment in the Hump. And you have a case where it's already sold out. They're going to be completely jacked up, and the energy in that place is going to be pretty fantastic. If you want to look at the keys in that game, Ole Miss needs to handle Josh Hubbard and force Mississippi State to play a 60-point-ish game. This game needs to look a lot like the Alabama game, and Ole Miss has the defense that is capable of making the rock fight happen. And Ole Miss handling what's going on, containing Josh Hubbard, I think Ole Miss is going to be in pretty good shape. Now, be competitive on the rebounding boards. Be competitive on the boards. Do not get blown out. Alabama had 37. They had 35 on Tuesday. That is a perfect number. They had the rebound advantage over multiple teams going up. Ole Miss is right even. They're playing even on the boards at the moment. It is going to be important for Ole Miss to continue that. You do not want to give Mississippi State second chance points. And third of all, as teams start to fear Malik Dia, who is going to step up and be the top option after that? Whenever you look at players on Ole Miss's roster, the Malik Dia is at 17.5 points, 10.3 rebounds, 2 assists. Whenever he becomes the focal point of other teams' game planning, which the last 2 or 3 weeks he hasn't been, but I guarantee it's about to start. Who is the next player that steps up? When you look at the roster, you got Sean Padula, who's averaging 11.5 in conference games, 2.3 rebounds and 13 assists, and a defensive dynamo against the Crimson Tide. But he didn't shoot particularly well against Alabama. But he's an excellent player. He has a chance to go 20, 30 points every single night because of the way he shoots. It's just the way he is. When you look at Matthew Morrell, everybody thinks that Matthew Morrell is probably the most talented basketball player on Ole Miss's roster. Is Matthew Morrell, who's averaging 11 points, 3.5 rebounds, 9 assists, being an absolute defensive wizard. Him and Dre Davis are doing so much work on the wings. It is cutting off skip passes and doing all of that as well. Is he going to step up? Is he that person? And finally, you have Jamin Brakefield, who has 11.8 points per game in conference play, 4.8 rebounds, 6 assists, including at the end of the Alabama game, going 6 for 6 in one-on-one opportunities at the free throw line. Ole Miss and Jamin Brakefield did a lot. Who is the second scorer? Your alpha dog has kind of emerged in Malik Dia, and Malik Dia is going to continue to get his as long as he's set up, basically. Who is the number 2? Whenever they make it hard for Malik Dia, who is the player that steps up? Is it a Dre Davis? Is it a Matthew Morrell? Is it a Juju Murray? Jamin Brakefield? Players like that. That is going to be the question that needs to be answered next, because it's like spring training. You might go into spring training and hit 15 home runs in spring training. Get into Major League, you have a hot start like JT Snow did back in the day. And all of a sudden the book gets out on you and they figure out how to pitch you, and all of a sudden your production goes way down. The same thing is going to happen here. The book is going to be out on Ole Miss, and they're going to start game planning for it. Who is the next player that is going to step up to kind of take that slack? That'll be an interesting thing to see. This game, Ole Miss and Mississippi State should be really interesting. Ole Miss, I told you yesterday, Final Four level team, but I do think Ole Miss has some losses coming. It's just the nature of this conference. There's nobody particularly going to go 18-0. Probably the best team in the league right now is the Auburn Tigers, and they're probably not going to go 18-0. Ole Miss 4-0 right now. Mississippi State is the freest of the free shots and the ultimate free shot that they can get. Can the Rebels take the next step? Should be interesting. Now, just so everybody knows what I'm doing, I picked Arkansas against Ole Miss early in the season. I picked Alabama on the road earlier in the season. So this week, I'm obviously going to be picking Mississippi State because, like I like to say, I'm not superstitious. I'm just kind of stitious. And this situation is, I think it's going to be a close game. But this is a situation over history. No matter how good the teams are, Mississippi State wins at Humphrey Coliseum. Ole Miss wins in Oxford. That is the way this series has gone for the better part of the last 10, 15 years. I think that Mississippi State is going to have so much energy because I think they have Tennessee next on the road. If Mississippi State loses to Ole Miss, they have Thompson Bowling and Tennessee awaiting, which means a 4-game skid is absolutely possible. And all of a sudden you're worried about just containing your season if Ole Miss wins this game. So I think Mississippi State's energy is going to be absolutely through the roof. I think Humphrey Coliseum is going to be through the roof, and it's going to be a difficult place to win. This is going to be a good thing if Ole Miss loses this game because Chris Beard has a chance to get on his team and get them kind of reinvigorated with Texas A&M and Missouri next week, because that's a top 10 Texas A&M team and a Missouri team that went on the road and beat top 10 Florida. It doesn't get any easier for Ole Miss. But this is the freest of the free shots, and we'll see exactly how it goes for Ole Miss. I'm pretty fired up about this game. If Ole Miss can go 5-0 in the SEC with A&M and Missouri up there to where you can just split it, it's 7-1, and then you have Texas and Auburn, you might walk into that Auburn game at like 8-1 on the schedule. And if that happens, the world is your oyster, man. The world is your oyster. And I think that Auburn game has a chance to be incredibly fun. But the Basketball Egg Bowl is on tap tomorrow. Check it out. Enjoy it. It should be a lot of fun. These two teams always are intense when they play each other. And because of that, the games tend to be a little bit predictable and a little bit kind of out there. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast out there. And thank you for making us the Ole Miss morning show of choice. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best sports conference in all of the nation. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everyone. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.